In Australia right now, ADHD is the most diagnosed mental health or neurodevelopmental challenge in our young people under 14. Recent Australian Bureau of Statistics data shows that anxiety is the number one for over 14s. And since COVID, that data indicates that as many as 41% of our girls and 21% of our boys are experiencing clinical levels of anxiety. In short, mental health challenges are rising, resilience is on the way down. Today on the podcast, my guest is going to help us to work out how we can improve both access to support and processes at home to help our kids do better. Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. My name is Dr Justin Coulson and I'm absolutely delighted, thrilled to be joined from the University of Sydney by Dr Jaimie Northam. Dr Jaimie Northam is a clinical psychologist at USyd. Dr Northam's clinical and research work focuses on children and adolescents and parenting. She has a particular interest in what are known as externalising disorders. We'll talk about those in a sec. They're things like oppositional defiance disorder, conduct disorder, and youth substance use. Currently, Jaimie's working on ways to help parents and young people notice the early signs of mental health problems and get access to research-based resources. She's passionate about upskilling the community, better support well-being and helping parents to build new skills. And Jaimie's a mum to Hazel, a typically rambunctious and busy and delightful 2-year-old. Dr. Northam, thank you so much for being with me on the Happy Families podcast. Really glad to have you along.
Thank you so much for having me today, Justin.
So I want to start with a hypothesis. I'm going to get you to tell me from your data and your clinical experience how close I am. At the moment, kids aren't active. Kids are on screens. Tech CEOs have developed algorithms to addict our kids to those screens. Parents are busy and stressed and distracted, sometimes in healthy ways, other times just in their own algorithmic miasma, and school pressure is increasing. At a society level, my hypothesis is that we're just doing it wrong right now, and these are the things that I see as being central contributors to our mental health challenges. Where am I right? Where am I wrong?
It is harder than ever to be a parent of kids at the moment. And I think the screens and I think the environment in which young people are in at the moment makes that doubly hard. We don't really know how to manage screens, and we don't know the long-term effects of big-time use of screens as well. And we can kind of make some guesses about ADHD and the effect that attention and screens is having on that diagnosis, but it is really difficult. So what did you get right? It's definitely more difficult than ever to be a parent and to be a young person. What did you get wrong? Screens aren't all bad, and screen time and use doesn't necessarily relate to anxiety and attentional problems later on. What we do know is correlated with those things is relationship with parents and relationship with the children and young people, and what we do to support conversations around how they're using screens and what they're seeing and what we can do to help increase that resilience within the home.
So, Jaimie, to the point that I made about parents being busy and stressed and distracted, sometimes with their own screens as well as the kids being on theirs, let's talk about this issue of building that relationship with parents. You've been working in this area at the University of Sydney for some time. What do you see as the biggest challenges outside of the world of screens to positive parent-child relationships?
Stress, absolutely, family stress. Like we've seen it in the news, the cost of living crisis, families and parents in particular are doing everything they can to try and support their family in the best way that they can. So there's absolutely no shame for parents from us for using screens and relying on these things at times. But where we would come from with this is that there's a right way to use them, and there's a way that we can use them that's more effective. Because at the end of the day as well, if you need to sit down and you need to get dinner cooked or you need to do your own thing, you've got work to do, that's a reality for the life that we're facing at the moment and the times that we're living in. But there's ways that we can do that, I think, that help to increase connection and help to really help with children's mental health and protect them a little bit.
Okay, let's take screens out of it for just a sec. If you were to give parents maybe one or two of the best pieces of advice that you've come across to help them to build a relationship better with their children, whether the child's 2 or 12 or 22 or anywhere in between, what would be the best things for parents to really connect with their kids?
Best thing for connection is absolutely scheduled time with your child, doing an activity that's really fun. So in the work that I do with kids who are particularly naughty, one of the first things we do before we even get to consequences is finding some nice ways that we can work in some time with. Now I'm talking like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes of sitting down and having a little play, going with what your child wants to do, whether that's playing Lego, whether that's doing a quick picture. Just a quick 10-minute top up is often enough to save us from having a family battle when it comes to dinner time or around other family events.
I love what you've said there. I have a confession. Sometimes I'm distracted. Sometimes I have really important things to do, and I forget that the most important things are my kids and the things that they're interested in. Last night, my wife, Kylie, was away. She wasn't able to be at home last night, and so I had the kids and looked after dinner. I actually paid one of the kids to cook dinner because I had too much going on. But while we were waiting for dinner, I finally had a break about 15 minutes before it was to be served up, and what I really wanted to do was lay down on the bed and zone out. I was happy to read a book or listen to a podcast or maybe watch a fraction of an episode of a series that I'm currently trying to binge in 15-minute increments. And my 11-year-old daughter walked into the room and wanted to show me her dragon lair. She's collecting all of these 3D printed dragons. I got to be honest, Jaimie, I thought to myself, of all the things that I could engage in right now, checking out an 11-year-old's cardboard box dragon lair beside her bed in her bedroom is near the bottom of the list. And because I'm a parenting expert, I pushed all that down, got off the bed and walked into the room with her, and I sat down on the carpet. And do you know what? For that next 10 minutes, as she described to me how she's got the clothes hanging for the dragons. I didn't know the dragons wore clothes, incidentally. And she's got all of these different things that she's set up, the creativity, the time, the effort, the hours she's put in. It was just delightful to see the joy that she was finding. When you say to invest that time, even if it's 10 minutes, it just makes a world of difference for them because they want us to be in their world.
Absolutely, it does. I love that example so much because you are able to find a place within yourself, even though you're busy and stressed and you've had a huge day, to then reconnect with your daughter. But I also just want to highlight the fact that not everybody is able to do that. And that's okay. That's really okay if you're not able to do that. There are times when I'm exhausted as well. And I know that even if I try to do it, I'm going to be snappy and I'm not going to be engaged. And that's not going to be a good use of anyone's time. So I guess if we're looking for practical, implementable things, if my daughter comes up to do that to me and I'm in a space where I'm not able to do that, I will say, wow, thank you so much for coming to show me this. I'm so excited to see this. But mummy needs 10 minutes. And then I'm going to come and I want you to show me everything about this dragon's lair, because then you're also modeling that it's okay to have time to yourself and that there are times when you need a moment. And so you're modeling to kids how to manage emotions, how to set expectations, but that connection and that relationship is still very important to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that story so I could virtue signal a little bit and show how awesome I am as a dad. Let's
nailing it.
That's right. Let's get back to the serious conversation about mental health. This concept of connecting, belonging, feeling like you matter to your parents, getting time and attention in spite of the busyness, the stress, the distraction, the screens, the school pressures, and so on. What are the long-term mental health implications when kids can't get that connection?
It's really tricky to monitor exactly what causes mental health problems and what makes them last. But we do know that at least half of all child mental health problems emerge before 12 and that they become life course persistent, which means that they
when I hear
stay.
That, yeah, that's right. Like they keep it for a long time. I'm cutting you off because that mental health challenges sort of present or show up before the age of 12 and they become lifelong. That's one of those statements that we hear a lot. Can you really unpack that and describe precisely what we're supposed to take from that? What does it mean specifically?
Yeah, I raised this also in terms of connection, because we need to be able to notice when things have gone off with our kids. So what does it mean specifically? It means that when we think about mental health problems, we think about difficulties in a specific area. For kids, the things that I'm most interested in and worried about with kids' mental health are they making friends? Are they feeling confident and happy to engage in school? Are they following most of the directions so that there's not lots of stress at home with parents as well? And if they're able to do that, that means that we know they can engage in school well, and they can learn, they can make new friends, and they can learn all the social things they need to do at different levels. But if there are fears and worries that are getting in the way of making friends, of being at school, or learning with their peers, or listening to their parents and following those instructions, then we know that they're not going to meet a lot of the needs that they need to meet and the milestones. If they don't meet those milestones, then it's a constant catching up process that starts, and that happens. So what that looks like is that you have a child who might be in kindergarten and really struggles following directions with their teacher. They don't know how to share with their peers very well, so they don't have very many friends, and their self-confidence goes down. And that has these big knock-on effects. And so then as clinicians and as a psychologist, it's about getting in as early as we can so that those long-term knock-on effects don't keep building up, and that kids then don't become disadvantaged in different ways.
Early intervention would also help to avoid the need for a diagnosis. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. So when we're thinking about early intervention, I like to think about what is it that's currently getting in the way for kids. So is it that there's a big emotional meltdown that's happening all the time that's stopping them from learning in school? In which case, we might do some early intervention in emotion regulation skills, which can be done with parents and with teachers. If there's something to do with being friendly and social with others, we might help them to learn sharing skills and really model that. And we can do these things first before things continue to escalate and become mental health disorders.
Jaimie, there's so much advice out there at the moment. Instagram and TikTok are just full of information that, frankly, I think is freaking everyone out. Parents are more on edge, more nervous, more worried, more anxious about their children and their mental health than perhaps at any other time. To what extent is that impacting the current state of mental health or mental illness in children? And I guess by extension, how much do you see parental anxiety about children having emotions and being anxious contributing to the fact that the children are having emotions and being anxious?
Oh, such an interesting question, an interesting phenomenon. And as a parent of a 2-year-old, I find myself, even though I'm an expert, questioning myself every day about the impact of things or if I'm doing things right. So it's a bit of a big question to answer. So I'll just start with the first thing that popped into my mind, which was around the advice and around the amount of content that currently exists. From a parenting perspective, I know even when my daughter was a baby, I felt like I was learning parenting from Instagram. And a lot of the stuff that I would get fed up would be conflicting information. I would hear something from one specialist, something from a different specialist. And I feel like that's a really common experience before social media really took off, just from different nurses and things when you're learning to breastfeed and all that kind of thing, because not one way works perfectly for everybody. But in the current day and age, we get this messaging constantly about how to best parent your child, how to best protect them from anxiety, how to best protect from social media influences and different things that are coming up on those platforms. And it's really, really difficult to actually know what to do and to question that. So if I could offer any practical advice about that, it's really about asking yourself, what is happening for my child at the moment? And what are the signs that things might not be going well? And taking it back to really basic principles. So in psychology, we always speak about the 3 Ds when we're thinking about needing to intervene with kids. And those are distress, dysfunction, and deviance. So distress, some behavior is worrying you or worrying your child. That's a perfect time to get help, because that's one thing that's really important. Dysfunction, that's the things that I like to think about is impacting learning or impacting a really happy life. So if you can't make friends, if you can't form those relationships, that's having a bit of dysfunction. So that's probably worth looking at. And then deviance is the last one, which sounds a little bit scary when you say it like that. But what deviance refers to is really, is my child within the realms of what's considered normal at this age? And are they sort of meeting those milestones that would be expected of them? And if they're not, again, that's probably another tick that you know that it's time to seek out a little bit of extra support.
Deviance does sound a little alarming. I tend to use the word deviation instead. Deviation just softens it that little bit for a parent who's already so anxious. But I think that's going to be so valuable and so useful for parents who are listening. Let's extend that then and highlight, how do you know that you're accessing support that's evidence-based? Because, I mean, the reality is that there are really well-credentialed, really well-intentioned, really smart experts. I'm not talking about, and I don't say this in a disparaging way, it's just the easiest descriptor, Instamums or TikTok influencers, well-intentioned and often sharing really great information. As somebody with a doctorate in psychology myself, sometimes I look at these social media people and go, damn, that's good. I'm stealing that. Like, the evidence is right there for it. That's brilliant. I think it's amazing. And other times they say such rubbish. But I want to ignore that for a minute. I want to talk about, there's me, and I'm saying, well, let me pick one that you know, Professor Mark Dadds. You work with Mark, and you obviously know me and the work that I do, and he and I disagree profoundly on one particular thing, which is the use of time out. I mean, he's all for it, because he's from the Triple P Matthew Sanders University of Queensland school. And I'm from a self-determination theory perspective, which says we want to minimize controlling techniques, and there are much better ways that we can do this without crippling relationships or without making kids experience these punitive outcomes. We can actually do it better. So Mark is highly credible. He's a really smart guy. He's made an enormous contribution to the world in his parenting research, as has someone like Nat Sanders. And yet somebody like me, who's relying on incredible experts who have written books like voluminous, the most published scientific researchers on the planet. Their research is deep and meaningful and useful as well. So when a parent comes across someone like me saying, don't use time out, and then the next thing in their algorithm serves up Mark or Matt or somebody like that saying, no, time out is really, really valuable and you need it, what are they supposed to do? Because both of us are coming from an evidence-based situation. How do you guide parents in that situation?
Yeah. So this is one that comes up all the time, as I imagine you would know. When you've got a child who's behaving poorly and you want to help them to learn the new skill to behave well, how do we do that best? And how do we figure out the evidence behind what's going to work? So you did a beautiful job then of explaining that there is a huge amount of evidence behind timeout and behind timeout not being harmful and being really helpful at times. But what I like to think of it too as I love metaphors when I'm working with families in particular, is that you can have a child who, have you heard the dandelion orchid metaphor before?
I have, but please share it.
Yeah, so the dandelion orchid metaphor is that you've got different types of kids, and you can think of kids as different types of flowers. The dandelion flower or a child is the sort of child who'll grow anywhere. They're really resilient, they're robust, they need really minimal conditions to grow into a healthy, functioning human being who's pretty happy. Then we get these children sometimes who we refer to as orchids, and they're very sensitive to environment. And they need very particular parenting input and very particular environments to grow. And when they grow, my goodness, they are spectacular. And I like to think about the parenting choices we make about discipline and learning skills and all those things as really individual to families and really individual to kids. What will work well for one kid might not necessarily work well for the other kid, even if both things are evidence-based. So what we need to do when considering which treatment to go with or which skills to implement, if you're thinking about advice that you receive on Instagram or TikTok, it's one, are there studies behind this that show that it works and that it doesn't do harm? Two, what I think is really important, are there clear guidelines on how to actually do it? Because a lot of the time, Insta mums will tell a nice thing and you go, that sounds cool, but I don't actually know how to do that then. So you want to see the actual steps involved so you don't screw it up, to put it really bluntly. And then lastly, you got to go, is this right for me? And is this a right fit for my child? So as you've mentioned, I work with Mark Dads, who is very big on timeout, and it does work very well for a lot of kids, but it doesn't work very well for all kids. And so even when I'm working in the clinic, it's very much a conversation about what are your needs? What can we do to meet those needs? And what's going to work for your family? And if you're assessing evidence-based care or evidence-based skills, it's that lens of, has there been work done to show this is true? How do I do it? And does this fit my philosophy? And does it fit how my child is?
Jaimie, parenting is complex, and it also highlights, I think, the challenge that we have with psychology generally. We know what works well on average, but very few people are actually average, if anybody, right? We're all that little bit different. Let's bring it back to a mental health discussion again, because that's really the central area that we need to focus on for our conversation. So far, you've highlighted that if we see a child who is distressed, dysfunctional, or deviating from what we see happening on average for their age group, for their developmental stage, we should start to say, okay, there is cause for some concern here. I have a couple of tricky questions to follow that up. First off, how do they get help? And secondly, what do they do when help is really hard to find because of the current challenges in our medical and psychological system, if they're dealing with really big challenges that need help sooner than the appointments will allow?
Yeah, it's one of those impossible problems that we're trying really hard to fix at the moment. You've raised several issues. So the first one's really around barriers to getting access to care. So in order to get children the care that they need, you need parents to recognise that there are issues that are going on that need more support. And then you need for them to be able to know where to go to actually access that support. And then you need to have the money, usually, to see a specialist or to see a psychologist, and you need to have that reduced waiting time to get in. So it's a really tricky context at the moment, especially with parental anxiety really high at the moment about looking after their kids the best they can. There's a lot of people trying to access services, and there are really long wait lists at the moment. So what we're really trying to do at the moment is find ways that we can help families to recognise when there are signs that things aren't going quite right, and then to give them some guidance on typical milestones, like when their kids are meeting them or not, and also how their children are going on a range of different areas in terms of wellbeing. And then we're providing links to services that are available online and that are free. So these things might be self-directed programs that they can do themselves, which can be a bit of a holdover until getting in to see somebody face-to-face. And our hope is that a lot of the time that doing these free, instantly accessible programs is actually going to decrease the amount of need that is put on the mental health service and system. Okay. So that those kids who do need to get that support really fast can get it a lot more fast.
So now I'm on the edge of my seat, because I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to wait 2 years to get a diagnosis or to find out what's really going on. But some people are literally waiting 1 to even 2.5 years was one that I heard the other day from somebody who just had to get some help. You're suggesting that you're working on some things to potentially provide the early intervention, which may, if not alleviate the problem entirely, at least reduce the challenges that parents are facing. Can you tell me a bit about that? What are you doing specifically to alleviate the concern, the anxiety, the stress that parents are facing when it comes to their worries about their kids and their mental health challenges?
Yeah, so at the moment, we've developed a tool called the Growing Minds Check-In. And the Growing Minds Check-In is a website that you can log on to. It's for parents of children 0 to 17 years of age, so a very broad range of age groups for parents. And it takes on average 6 minutes to do. And this check-in, what it does is we combine subjective concerns, so just general issues that parents have, and we have what we call an objective measure. And an objective measure is a population-based score that can tell you how your child is functioning overall in terms of mental health and wellbeing, and also in terms of anxiety, conduct issues, and attention. And that compares your child's score to other kids their age. So you can get a bit of an idea whether what areas they might be struggling in. And then we give recommended resources based on those outcomes for what's available online at the moment. So the goal is to really upskill parents so that they know what's happening with their child a little bit more, but they also know where they can go to online to get that really early intervention.
I love it. I'm going to summarize that because there were several things that you said that I think are really important. And in case somebody was listening while they're dealing with a child or, I don't know, doing other stuff, 6 minutes, you do this questionnaire based on what your experience is, and then your results are compared with population level data so that you can see whether your child is or is not deviating or the levels of distress or whatever are different. It's for anyone with kids between 0 and 17. So we're talking about if you're a parent and you're worried about your child, there's information here that's going to be useful. And once the information has been collected through the questionnaire, your system provides directions for where to go for the appropriate level of help and how to get that.
That's exactly right. And the other thing that we do, which I think is really fantastic, is we give the feedback summary form. And this feedback summary form can be used to take to your GP. It can be used to take to other psychologists or pediatricians. And it gives a snapshot of how things were at that moment. And in the study that we're currently running, where it's a study because what we're trying to do is get as input as we possibly can before we just put the tool out into the world. And we're partnered with the Raising Children's Network to put this tool out nationally into the world once it's done. So we're really seeking parents to help us to test this at the moment and to give us feedback on what works and how we can make it better, because this tool is really for parents and it's to encourage people to think about well-being and what we can do every day to look after our kids.
I'm hearing you say it, and part of me is thinking, why is it only just happening in 2025? Like, this seems like it's so obvious that somebody should have done this already. All right, so if parents want to check up on their kids and want to be able to access this 6-minute questionnaire, and obviously it sounds like this is for science, so it will support the work that you're doing as well, where do they go and how do they do this? How do they find out how their kids are going?
Yeah, so you can sign up to be part of the study, which is the Growing Minds Check-In study, and the website, all one word, growingmindscheckin.au. And I'll spell it out too. It's growingmindscheckin.au.
So growingmindscheckin.au, we'll link to that in the show notes. 6-minute questionnaire, and then a comparison of your child against what's going on for the rest of the population.
And links to available resources that are online and freely available.
Yeah, probably should have mentioned that as well. That was my fault. That's really important for anyone who wants help. Jaimie, I think this has been a really important conversation. I reckon so many parents will have taken so much from it. Is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't discussed just in the last sort of 20, 25, 30 minutes or so?
I just really want to reiterate how difficult it is to parent kids at the moment and how many stresses there are out there and competing ideas and demands and how hard it is to know what the right thing to do is. But that if you can really go back down to basics and think about those 3 Ds, think about how your child is and what you're doing to support that relationship with that special time every now and then, that 9 times out of 10, you'll be doing a fantastic job, and that your gut will tell you when it's time to do the next thing. But there's always extra things that we can be doing to support our kids, just like there's always extra things we can be doing to be better in all different areas of our life. And so sometimes too, it can be good to use something like the check-in just to check if there is anything extra that you can be doing. Or if you have no worries about your kids and you just want a bit of a baseline touchstone, then that's great too. That's a great use of the check-in.
Do you reckon we're making it too hard on ourselves? Do you think we're thinking about it too much?
Oh, it's hard, isn't it? Because we're in an age where we know more than ever before what works.
And I'm not convinced that that's helping us, right?
I know, that's the thing, isn't it? And so how do you actually use that? It's impossible to know sometimes. But I do think if we can try to simplify what we get into some sort of filter and go, how am I showing my child I love them? How am I enjoying being in this relationship? And that's your basis, because then when things slightly go off, you can go, oof, something's not quite sitting right there. And then that's when you can go into the next step of going, what do we know about this issue? How can I approach this in a way that I know is going to work, that's shown to be effective and will be effective for my particular kid?
Really enjoyed the conversation. So grateful for your time. Thanks, Jaimie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Dr Jaimie Northam is a clinical psychologist and lecturer at the University of Sydney. We will link to Dr Northam's profile in the show notes, as well as everything that you need to know about the check-in so that you can find out how your kiddo is going. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Coulson from Bridge Media. More information and resources to make your family happier can be found at happyfamilies.com.au.